today. So our panel is really bringing everything that we've done together. We've heard about the science, a lot about biomarkers and endpoints and clinical trials. But why do we all do what we do every day? We do it for people living with ALS and those that love them. And so this panel is really about participating in clinical trials, and when you can't participate in clinical trials, expanded access, and yes, we love it. For ALS, it did a lot, even beyond expanded access. But also open label extensions, but we're going to start at the path to diagnosis, because that's really what frames up what people and what choices that they can have. So we'll start with some brief introductions. So I'm Mary Kay Turner. I'm Senior Vice President of Brainstorm Cell Therapeutics. We have an asset in development. We completed a phase 3 trial, and we're going to be initiating a phase 3D with an investigational cellular therapy that delivers neurotrophic factors. And so we're excited about the promise of that. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry more than 30 years. I'm that old. And I've worked across many disease states, HIV, oncology, neuroscience, and my hope is that before I leave this industry, that like many of the disease states that I've worked in, this will become a chronic disease, that we'll be able to treat it and people will be able to live with the disease. And I'm gonna let Gabrielina tell you a little bit about herself.
First thing, I don't know how to use the mic.
It's
It's working.
It's
Is
on.
it working?
No.
How about now? How about now?
No.
Still not. Okay, I can shout.
Oh, sorry.
I know.
So my name's Gabrielina. My son Matthew was diagnosed with ALS 11 years ago. A little bit of background, I've done a lot of advocacy work in ALS. We'll get into a little bit about why that is later. I spent 40 years in the insurance industry as an executive in operations. My last role there was managing the legal operations for a large insurance company. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. Everything I did there was around creating processes that eliminate waste, leverage resources the best way possible, and produce a better outcome. And so all of my focus around that with my son and clinical trials and my involvement in advocacy is some of it derived from my career experience. My son was a Navy pilot. Just to give a little background on him, my older son is also a Navy pilot. They're both now retired, they're in their 40s. And Matt retired in 2013, or 2014 actually, and they live in Pennsylvania. We relocated to Pennsylvania, and I'm down there helping them. They have 3 boys, ages 13. He's in the grunting and single syllable stage of life. They have an 11-year-old son and an 8-year-old that we refer to as a whirling dervish. I have a commitment that I made in the very beginning when my son was first diagnosed, that I was going to stay in advocacy and remain engaged until we come to a point where ALS is a treatable disease, and that everyone has an opportunity to stop the progression and improve. And that's why I'm here today.
And Deb and Matt are some of the first other people that I ever met in ALS when I started working in ALS about 9 years ago. And I'd like to give the floor to Wendy to tell us a little bit about herself.
Hi, my name is Wendy Henderson, and I am an ALS warrior. I was diagnosed in August of 2022. Didn't really see it coming, just showed some signs in my hand, and the next thing you know, I'm on this journey. I'm a slow progressor, so a lot of people look at me and don't see ALS until I start talking. I am married, and I have 3 beautiful children and 5 grandchildren, and another one on the way. We also have, my daughter has a horse and just bought him, so I have a grand Nene as well. I had a very successful career before I was diagnosed with ALS. I spent 11 years in the National Football League. back in the 80s and 90s, and just recently got to go to the Super Bowl and see my Eagles win the Super Bowl. Go Bird. Sorry, we're in Boston saying that, not sorry. So I spent the last 30 years in commercial real estate. I did project management, property management, and construction management. So my whole career was spent thinking of the worst case scenario and preventing it from happening. So when I got my ALS diagnosis, most patients turn inwards. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to go out there and get in front of people. I'm not that person. I decided to turn my journey with ALS into raising awareness and doing trials that I can do and really kind of elevate people's thought process on what ALS is. When I was first diagnosed, none of my friends knew what it was. They thought it was contagious. They thought it was a lifestyle. It could have been a myriad of things until my husband and I went and posted a video and explained ALS. Nobody in my circle of friends knew. They knew of ALS, but they didn't know anything about it. So I stand before everyone I can and use my voice while I can to give a face, a voice, and a name to ALS.
Thank you. Shout out to her husband Chaz in the back who drove her here from Philadelphia, so thank you. It's not easy to travel with ALS, so we really appreciate it. Next, I would like to give the floor to my friend and advocate, Ron Hoffman.
Thank you. I was a caregiver for a gentleman in 1997. I did not go to school, to be in this work, and it's just something that unfolded. And as we were living with ALS in 1997, I knew very little about it. And we'd get information from several different organizations at the time, ALS Association and MDA. And respectfully, the information we sought just seemed irrelevant to the experience we were in. So a seed was planted in my mind and in Gordon's mind, there needs to be a different way of doing this in regards to care. So Gordon had bulbar onset, and as things progressed, he had a fast progression. About a month before he passed, I sat with him and his wife with presented the idea of putting a fund together in Gordon's name. They said yes, so we created the Gordon T. Hill ALS Fund. Just me out there helping people. As time went on, the Gordon Hill Fund birthed what is now Compassion to Care ALS, the nonprofit that we are today. That was finalized in 2002. And we work with families all over Massachusetts, all over New England, and actually all 50 states across the US and many countries around the world. Our work is about enhancing quality of life. Our work is all about care, helping people navigate all the complexities of living with this disease, whether it's physical support, emotional support, spiritual support. There's nothing in the ALS experience, in my opinion, that people encounter that there's not something we can lean into. Maybe it's a little bit, maybe it's a great deal. We leave advocacy to the others, we leave research to the others. Our focus is on helping people live with ALS. When invited, exploring end of life when invited. The art of language is incredibly important to us. And I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to see all of you here because it's been my wish to sit in front of you folks for years to hear about care, what it means to actually be living with ALS. As you know, it can look uniquely different from one person to the other. And it's an extraordinary circumstance that families find themselves living in. The families, not the individual, but the families. Oftentimes people can be incredibly stuck and stubborn, if you will, very disconnected. I'm of the opinion anyone diagnosed with ALS or any other illness for that matter, but maybe especially with ALS, it's your traumatic experience. And yet there's so little time and effort, and I'm navigating the trauma of experiencing and living with it. And that's what we do. We have a staff of 30 people, actually 29, and they're pretty extraordinary. And so we do what we do, and I'm really grateful. And our programming is incredibly unique. I know that to be true because just about every other ALS organization in the country has modeled what we do or attempted to. So I'm flattered for that. And again, grateful to be here, and especially with my friends here.
Thank you. I can tell you that Ron is amazing, that I'll have, someone will call and they'll need help, and Ron's never turned a person away, and I've sent him some really difficult people. It was like, oh, thanks, Mary Kay. But he helps everyone, and no questions asked, so we really appreciate that. So we're going to explore a lot of topics today, but I want to start with the diagnosis, because to get to clinical trials, we really have to talk about what it takes for someone to get an ALS diagnosis. And so we know that it's generally 6 to 12 months, but sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. So can you briefly tell us, how long did it take? What other things happened to you on that path?
So, first and foremost, I do want to say, if you get diagnosed within 6 to 12 months, you're one of the lucky ones. In speaking to other ALS patients I'm on support groups, it can take up to 18 to 24 months. So mine started at the barn with my daughter. My hands would get cold, and I wasn't able to pull the girth tight on her horse to keep her from falling off. So I went to my primary physician, and she immediately threw her hands up in the air and said, oh, looks like it could be carpal tunnel. I'm going to send you to an orthopedic surgeon. I specified that for a reason. So I went to the orthopedic surgeon. He took x-rays and immediately told me I had to have cervical surgery, that 3 levels were degenerated. He said that I presented as a compression injury, as if I dove